Hello, Robs. We're back with Hilda Lewis, The Witch and the Priest, a novel based on the true story of Joan Flower, the infamous 17th century witch. We moved to chapter 9, page 107, about one-third of the way through the book. He was laying in a cushioned chair, his face turned to the summer garden. Because of the fire burning in the grate and because of the sun streaming in through the open window, he was comfortable. But he was weary, so that although Hester had put the tobacco jar and the long pipe on the stool by his side, they stood untouched. Joan Flower came in from the summer heat, and the cold came with her, so that he coughed and pulled the rug higher above his knees. But all the same, he was forced to smile seeing her there, a wild rose thrust through the dark of her curls. And he stopped his smiling. For all her sweet shape, she was a lost soul, unless he could win her for God. In the end, he told her, God will win. She shook her head so that the dark curls flew. No, priest, I am for my master now and for always. In the end, you will come to the mercy of God. I did what I did, and even now I cannot repent. Yet you will repent, he promised her. Priest, have you forgotten what it was I did? How could I forget? And he remembered little Henry beginning to peak and pine, and the way he would push the food from him, or let the spoon drop from his hand. But the terrible fits had not begun yet, and they were hopeful, all of them, Francis and Cecilia and the physician and Hester and himself. But for all that, the child had grown worse, fear deepening to terror in the young eyes, sharp, nervous turn of the head this way or that. And even that had not been the worst of it. When he remembered how the child had suffered, the sickness, the convulsions, the pain, he could hardly endure to look upon Joan Flower, not though she was dead and suffering for her wickedness. Yet, if under God he was to be a good shepherd, he must be patient, watching his every opportunity. We had done what had to be done to the glory of the Master. He came back from his thoughts with a start. If he wanted to win her, he must listen to every word, watch for every sign. Now we were free, Joan Flower said. Now we were happy. With this deed, so it seemed, Meg had wiped out the memory of her dead child. And we were the more glad since it was drawing near to All Hallows and our autumn meeting. You know, for I have told you that at each Sabbath we stand up to tell what we have done, to enlarge the name of the Master. When a witch has done no evil or little evil, then she is pelted with stones or beaten with rods, and some have died of it. But when she has done much evil, then she is acclaimed in full coven, and she is seated near the Master, and he loves and caresses her. So you can understand how Margaret and I longed for the meeting and counted the days. Last day in October, a clear autumn day, all gold and glowing. How convenient that I'm on it on this day, and we longing for the feast and restless for the feast. O priest, priest, still they dance and they drink and give their bodies to love. And I have no body. He was shocked by the naked longing in her eyes. She sighed deeply, taking up her tale. Meg stood combing out the tangles of her hair. She went about like a slut when there was none to see, but for the Sabbath she must be beautiful. Last time the Master had chosen her above all. This time, surely, it would be so again. Suddenly she stopped, comb in her lifted hand. Philip does not go with us, she said. No, I said, and then I added, mourning, Philip is not our concern. The Master will send for her. Meg's pale eyes clouded. Will she be laid out upon the altar stone? She asked with the soft silliness of hers. And will they say the Mass over her body? She began to giggle. A pretty sight, Philip, with her brown skin and her flat chest, and the ribs thrusting through her lean sides. The Master looks upon the inward heart, I began. But he likes the body too, she interrupted, and with mock modesty folded her hands between her thighs. When it was full dark and the stars pricking in the cold black sky, we went rejoicing to the Sabbath. Meg rode upon her rat and found no pleasure in it. She could not endure the feel of the creature between her legs. Yet for cowardice she must clutch at the greasy skin. And when we came to a bank of cloud and her mount dropped sharply, she cried out and pressed herself still close to the thing she loathed. I mean, you're a witch. Can't you just swap out the rat for another cat like a Rudderkin? Anyway, all about us the air shook with the rush of flight, with the noise of our mounts and with our wild cries as we threw ourselves forward, all impatient for the Sabbath. Joan Willamot, urging herself forward upon her straw, rushed by me. Ellen Green steadied herself, and we flew on together. We were flying now over the field of the Sabbath. Below us lay the wild heath. I could make out the clearing where we danced and the great stone that is the master's seat white in the moonlight. I heard the sound of beasts and human bodies grounding, and we stood upon the sacred place. It was then I saw my younger daughter streaking naked through the air. She did not so much fly as dart, and when she fell, it was straight and sudden as a falling star. It was as though your God himself reached out a hand to cast her away. She stood upright in the moonlight. Her black hair streamed forward beneath the poisoned berries of her crown. Fine glassy beads of bryony about heart-shaped leaves and wicked purple flowers, and about her little neck she had set a necklace of the same, and about her brown thighs also, and the nipple of each small breast she had pointed with a green heart. There was a wildness about her, a wickedness, I thought. If you should prick a vein, there would flow not warm red blood, but cold green poison. It was hard to believe that this was the child I had once clouted and then stuffed with bread and a smear of honey to stop her noise. We went softly to our places, for until the kiss is given, we have no desire to speak with another, but wait in quiet until our sacred rites admit us to the Master's glory. Philip dropped lightly into her place, and leaning across her neighbor, "For remember we sit, man by woman," she whispered, "will the God keep his word? If he comes in the shape he has promised, then I will adore him. I will serve him with my body." "Spare me," Samuel Fleming said, his face shadowed by his hand. "If you are to save me, should you not hear all?" she asked. A little sly, he sighed, knowing that she dwelt on these things because she lusted still for the unspeakable rites. "They were sweet and sacred to me," she said, "and still are, and still are. When I lifted my head, I saw the Master standing upon the stone. And that is a strange thing. We never saw him come, and we never saw him go. We lifted our eyes, and he was there, or he was not there. He had kept his promise. He stood there in the likeness of a great black ram. I looked sideways at Margaret. Did she still despise the god? Her white face swung towards me between the pale gold of her hair. The fear in her eyes gave me the answer. From my other side, I caught a deep, long sigh of ecstasy. Such ecstasy only your true witch knows. "And is my sister frightened?" Philip whispered, mocking. "Frightened of this great and noble beast, of this magnificent god of ours? Let her not fear. She will not be called upon." She said no more, but sat, eyes unmoving, upon the Master. And now the trumpet sounded. It is a sound to freeze the words on your tongue and the blood in your veins. We rose up in our places, and we made a circle about the god that stood in the shape of a great ram upon the high stone. For the first thing at the Sabbath is to pay our severance, or reverence. Severance, reverence. This is a fine sight, priests. We stand in our circle, bending outward straight as a rod, and we lift a foot forward in the air. We cry out, "Hail, Lord, hail, Satan, hail, hail," and the leaves shiver on the trees with the sound of our crying, and there is a rolling as of thunder between heaven and earth. Then the captain sets a great white candle between the horns of the Master, and the children go about. "The children?" he asked as though unbelieving. Yet he believed it, for the sigh that burst upward seemed to break his heart. "Yes, priest, I have told you. Have you forgotten? If I could have won the little Lord to my Master, he need never have died." The children went about and gave us each other The children went about and gave us each our candle of black. Then once again the circle swung, and as we stood before the Master, we reached up and kindled our black candles from the white candle that flamed between his horns. And when our flames were steady burning, we broke the circle at that point where the most honored stands by the least honored. That is where the newest witch stands by the children, for it is always thus we stand, each one in his place. We move slowly in our line, the most worshipful at the head, and the children at the tail, to give the kiss of homage. Samuel Fleming lifted his face, grimacing with disgust. She laughed at that. The god is not like any man nor any beast, for beneath the tail he wears a face, and it is that face we kiss upon the lips. At last we three stood before the Master, and one after another we knelt to give the kiss. I saluted him, and Margaret after me. But when Philip knelt, he bade her stand, and he turned about so that she kissed him upon the face between the horns. The children stopped moving, not knowing what to do, until the captain stepped forward and flicked them on. The kiss between the horns, such a thing we had never seen, no, not even the oldest in all the covens, though we had heard that the Master will sometimes so honor the great, the kings and the queens and your fine clutchmen that are his servants, pardon me, they're not cannibals, they're just murderous witches. Then your Master is not above the vanities of the world, Samuel Fleming said quickly. He is not such a fool. She was just as quick. The vanities of the world, that is his winning card. And now, the last kiss given, we came again to our places, shielding our candles with our hands. We sat upon the ground, crescent-wise, facing the Master, and each one with his candle burning blue by his side. You should see it, priest, the dark night and the blue flames burning upward towards the stars. And again the trumpet sounded, and now it was the time for the Master to bid us tell how we had enlarged his kingdom upon earth since the last Sabbath. So we stood up one after another, and I sat there marveling at his patience, so small the evils and so mean. Here a cow with dugs bewitched to give no milk, there an ox or a sheep sick, or a patch of corn blighted, or an apple tree cankered. But I was wrong, priest. I should have remembered. I should have remembered Margaret and the way small evils grow too big. It's supposed to be too big, I believe. T-O-O. And so at last I stood up in my place. Lord, I cried out, I have brought another soul to your service. Let it stand forth, he commanded. So Philip stood up and went forward. She knelt before him, her head a little bent. Raise your head, he said, and she lifted her face. He stared at her with narrow eyes, and from narrow eyes she stared back, and there was no fear in her. Is this the shape of the God you desired, he asked, and are you satisfied? Yes, Lord. Her voice rose clear, and we all heard it. Now we baptize you in my name, he said. Cast away the name of Christian baptism and take the new. Be known by it wherever my servants foregather, but in no place else. So the captain brought the goblet and baptized her. 2 souls you have brought to me, he said. Yes, Lord, I answered, 2 daughters, all I have. It shall be remembered to you, he said. But priest, it was forgotten. It was forgotten. Then he cried out, let the 2 stand together, that I may see them. So Margaret came forward, all trembling, and dared not raise her head. But Philip stood upright, and when they stood together, I had my pride in them. For Meg, though but a poor creature, was milk and honey in the moonlight, and Philip, in her scarlet crown, wore wickedness as saints their halo. He looked at my white girl. You have been my servant for full 3 months, he said. What have you done for my service? And while Margaret shook and could not find her tongue, Philip cried out in a clear voice, We have bewitched the little lord up at the castle. He suffers strange agonies, and soon, but not too soon, he shall die. It is good, he said, but not so good. The child's body you will destroy, but what of his soul? Can you win me his soul? And he turned to Margaret, pressing for his answer. Lord, she said at last very low, this is a hard thing, for he is mostly truly a Christian child. His lips turned backward over the strong white teeth. He looked as though he might tear her to pieces, but Philip spoke still in that clear voice. Lord, we will try. See to it then, he smiled upon her, but, and his smile was spiteful upon Margaret, there is more to do. Is there not more to do? Yes, Lord, she faltered, and it was hard to catch her words. There is the other boy, the little Lord Francis. Yes, and she brightened, and her voice came more strong. There is the girl, the Lady Catherine. We could kill them, all three. See to it then, he said once more, but he was not well pleased. Then indeed it needed no God to know her poor quality. Philip raised herself upon her toes. She was not tall, and whispered in his ear. And now he was pleased, and pleased indeed. He tweaked her ear so that the blood ran down her neck among the red poison berries. But she gave no sign of pain, standing there proud yet humble before him. This new witch of mine strikes to the womb of the matter. Speak and tell your purpose. Philip said softly, but every sound came clear. To kill the children is not enough. For revenge we must go deeper, deep as the insult, and deeper still. They shall have no more children, the Lord and the Lady. The seed must die and the womb be blasted. She shall conceive no more. Samuel Fleming's frail body shook. I can endure no further. Yet the lady endured it, Joan Flower reminded him, and the Lord endured it, and above all the little ones endured it. It is harder sometimes to endure for those we love than to endure for ourselves. That is a great nonsense, priest. When another hangs, it is his neck that is broken, not our own. So also, when we ourselves come to the gallows, it is our soul takes the fear, our bodies the agony. But that was not the end of Philip's planning. She meant the Lord and the Lady to go childlike, not only on earth, but in heaven also. She was bent upon winning the souls of the little ones, with fear and with torment, to make them cry out against God, to turn them towards the Master, accepting ease from torment at his hands. Two fine and precious souls lost to your God, and the Lord and Lady childless on earth and in heaven alike. His face crumpled into lines of pain, remembering the torment the children had suffered, and no word of complaint from them, tender as they were, not from their parents. Yes, we failed, but that night, the night of the All Hallows feast, we did not dream of failure, Joan Flower said and sighed. And so our business being done, the master nodded for us to begin the dances, and as he nodded, the great light upon his head bobbed up and down, the shadow of his horns jigged like curved swords upon the ground. I remember well the order of the dances. First we did the leaping dance. We leaped so high in the air it seemed we must touch the moon with our fingertips. And that year the corn grew higher than ever was known. Next we did the dance of fertility of beast. We danced it with so good a will that the cattle brought forth in abundance. Then the master commanded the captain to sing. It was a hymn to the master, and it has many verses, but not one fit for your ears. It praises his virility, and the chorus we sing together. She began to hum, and in the sunlight her body swayed voluptuously, and now we could hear low, sweet voices and the curious, senseless words. Har, har, devil, devil, come, Satan, Lord of evil, dance here, dance there, play here, play there, prance and dance, sway and play, sway and play. Sabbath, sweet Sabbath of our delight. Sabbath, great Sabbath, and holy the night. We wait for the nod of our Master the God. Har, har, devil, devil, come, Satan, Lord of evil. And then, priest, we dance and we stamp our feet and we clap our hands until the ground rings and sends the sound of our joy to the sky, and the sky sends it back again, and so between the ringing of heaven and earth we dance, and the ring moves faster, faster, and the song comes louder, and it is all a madness and a delight and a sweet poison in the blood. And so we came to the last dance of all, the dance of Follow the Master. Philip stood behind him, and no one between them. And I stood near, for I too was honored that I had brought her soul to him. Always, priest, in this dance, a witch stands by a spirit, male with female, female with male, that we may know delight. But Meg stood at the end among the children. She went to her place sullen enough, but when she saw how she stood between two pretty boys, she brightened, and soon she was dancing with the same madness as the rest of us. Suddenly, with no warning, as is the way in this dance, the pipe stopped and the music broke. It was the moment. Oh, priest, there is no human coupling like coupling with a spirit. No, never close your eyes. It is a thing you must know. And it is a right coupling, for it brings fertility to all who desire it, and to those alone. And it is a strange thing when one couples with a spirit. Then he is warm and as any man. But when one couples with the devil, he is colder than stone. And when he is cold, he begets no child. He lifted a puzzled head, but the devil cannot breed. Learned men have told us so. Then they lie, priest, in this as in other things. Have you not heard of devil's spawn? If the master considers a witch worthy, he asks her if she will bear his child. If she says no, then when he takes her, he is cold as well water. But if she says yes, then he is warm as a man. Shameless, shameless, Samuel Fleming said and groaned. Leave your groaning, priest, Joan Flower said, or I shall think you envy us our pleasures. Nor would you be the first priest to do so. No, nor to join us too, forswearing your own God and bending the knee to mine. I have seen them, and she thrust an impudent face close to his so that he was faint with the coldness that came from her. They become great men with us. They stand next to the God himself. Go, he said. Torment me no longer with your shameless shames. Your spirit is weak, she said, mocking, but mine is strong. You cannot endure the wild, free smell of evil, but I can endure the stifling stench of good. So God shall catch you in the end, he said. And that is the end of chapter 9. I've done something to my camera, so hopefully it didn't destroy the the visibility of the text, though I sometimes think it has. Yeah, there's something going on there that isn't right. Anyway, that's all. Goodbye. Goodbye. Let me close this damn thing and see.